Hello everyone. Right. So Natalie is going to be a few minutes late. Just something came up last minute, but that's totally fine. So instead, what I would love to do is just start by checking in on how everyone is doing, how you're feeling, where you're all tuning in from. And then we'll dive in properly when Natalie gets started. I might give a little bit of context to what we're going to cover, but apart from that, it's just me for the first 15 minutes. Hello. I love the fact you can wave at people on here, it's so much nicer. Hey Bryden, good to see you. I was just saying, let me know how everyone is feeling. Let me know how you're doing today, especially given that this live is going to be all about emotions. So yeah, be good to check in with yourself, see how you're feeling, see how you're doing. And Natalie will be joining us shortly. Hello. Yeah, where are you guys all tuning in from? Hey. Also, this is my first time going live, by the way, but it's nice to see your waves coming back. Oh my gosh, my brother's joined. Hello, I know who to ask if I need a top up of water. Yeah, for those of you just joining, the same house, yes. For those of you joining, Natalie's going to join in a few minutes. She just had something come up last minute, but then we'll dive in properly. But in the meantime, let me know how you're feeling. Let me know what's going on for you today, whether it is, whether it is, been a difficult day. I know a lot of people have found this week really hard, especially in the UK, given that the lockdown is kind of carrying on and it feels like it's dragging on forever. I know a lot of people are struggling with that, so just take a minute to check in with yourself, see how you're doing. Hello. This is also going to be all about where we tend to hold different emotions in the body and about how we release them from the body in general, especially each part of the body individually. So just check in with yourself on how you're doing today, how you're feeling, and maybe if you can, try and pay attention to which parts of your body are feeling tight or tense, or maybe have some tingling, like whatever's going on for you, which parts feel hot and cold. I know that if I'm feeling particularly anxious, I get really hot, really cold hands and feet. That's a pretty common one as well. But they're actually okay at the moment, which is nice. Hello, Rebecca. Right, it's good to see people joining. Okay. Hey Josh. So to give you guys a bit of context, so we're going to be talking about, like I just said to those of you who have been here for a while now, where emotions are held in the body and how we release them, because so often we can have difficult emotions come up and get really kind of stuck in them, especially if, well, at least for me personally, when I first started with self-growth work, I felt like I was becoming more and more aware of what was going on for me, and I was really tuning in to what was happening for me in my body and in my mind, probably more in my mind to start with. And because I didn't really know how to handle it, I just kind of freaked out. I was like, oh my God, I'm feeling anxious. What do I do with that? And I just focused on the fact I was feeling anxious, and that would make me feel more anxious, and it would kind of end up in this crap kind of cycle, which I'm sure a lot of you can relate to. I'm doing well, thank you. How are you? Let me know how you're doing in the comments. Sorry, I know you literally just joined. I was saying everyone just check in with yourself and see what's going on for you today, whether you're good, you're great, not so great, and where you kind of feel that in your body if you do. On that note as well, when again, just for me, like when I first started doing this kind of work and tuning into, oh hello, Natalie's joined. One sec. When I first started tuning into my body and my emotions, hello, sorry, I'm just gonna quickly finish what I was saying, then we'll dive into it. When I first started getting in tune with my body and my emotions, I didn't have a clue how to shift them, I just knew kind of what was going on more and more, but I never did anything about it. I just was super aware of what was wrong in my eyes, because I viewed it as being a bad thing that I was anxious, or a bad thing that I was angry, and I just would focus on that specific thing and end up in this spiral and get really stuck. And honestly, so many times I just thought, I just want to be happy. And I spoke about this in an IGTV that I posted yesterday, just saying, like, it's not about becoming happy, it's about learning to express the emotion, because the key word in that is becoming. So if you're focusing on becoming happy or happier, then really you're just saying, I'm focusing on the fact that I'm not happy right now. And that's a really key point. Anyway, hello properly. How are you?
I'm good. It's so nice to be on here with you. Your first ever live. Welcome
Yes.
to the live stage.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, hello. It's good to see so many familiar faces joining as well. And that's good to hear that you're good, Josh. And yeah, the cold hands and feet thing, I'm glad that resonated or like clicked. Yeah. When that kind of clicked for me, I was, became suddenly so much more aware of it. I was like, okay, I have freezing cold hands and feet. That must mean I'm anxious, because I was so unaware of what I was feeling at the time that actually my body's messages became the kind of first port of call, because that's something I noticed more quickly than what my thoughts were doing, especially before I started getting into the habit of meditating. But yeah, actually, I did want to start by reading a passage from a book called The Trauma of Everyday Life. I know any friends who are watching this, they'll know that I bang on about this book all the time.
It's
so good. This is probably going to show backwards to everyone, but you get the gist. It's called The Trauma of Everyday Life, and by Mark Epstein. And it essentially tells the story of the Buddha, but explains it in a way about his trauma, which is really, really interesting for anyone who's interested in neuroscience, psychology. It's got a lot of long words in it. I won't lie, it's quite a hard read, but it's incredible. And this one short paragraph it just hits so hard for me. And it essentially is about meditation, but it actually applies to anything in life, and it completely changed the way that I look at things, and emotions in particular. So it says, in our meditation practice, we think that noises, cars, voices, sights, and distractions are all things that come and bother us when we want to be quiet. But who is bothering whom? Actually, we're the ones who go and bother them. The car, the sound, is just following its own nature. We bother things through some false idea that they're outside of ourselves, and cling to the ideal of remaining quiet and undisturbed. Learn to see that this is not the things that bother us, that we go out and bother them. See the world as a mirror. It is all a reflection of mind. When you know this, you can grow in every moment, and every experience reveals truth and brings understanding. And as soon as I started thinking of distractions in that way, I was like, damn, I'm bothering the car. The car's not bothering me. And that completely...
I love that perspective. It's such a shift, a powerful shift, isn't it? And yeah, thank you so much for starting with that. And I think we should share that after, because it feels like I want to have the reminder. I want to have that written as a reminder, because it's something that, yeah, blows my mind.
Yeah, and as soon as I kind of realized that, I remember thinking, it just kind of completely flipped the way that I saw it, and completely changed my perspective entirely. Oh my gosh, there's so many new people, so exciting. But yeah, I remember just sat in meditation, and from that day onward, I was so much more peaceful in my own mind. I remember when I first started, I had the reaction to meditation that I'm sure the vast majority of people do, which was, I can't do this is too hard, there are too many thoughts whizzing around in my head, I can't do meditation. But really, that's like the point of meditation. If you have too many words whizzing around in your head, then meditation is for you.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's still a massive, people really struggle with that still, don't they? And that's one thing we say in the community to start with. It's like, it should be hard, it's meant to be tricky. But actually, once we forgive and we kind of come in with no judgment, we can allow ourselves to learn. Like with any new skill, it's learning a new skill, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, this stuff really does take time. Like, I feel like I had to listen to so many podcasts and read so many books and practice so much stuff on my own for literally years, until it clicked one day, and I was like, oh, that's how emotions work. That's how the universe works. And now it all makes total sense. Because I think that one thing that really underpins a lot of what we're going to talk about today is the law of attraction, at least on, a small level, in my opinion. Well, it's quite a big thing for me anyway. I think it really does underpin anything. And a lot of the time, if people don't understand the law of attraction and they come to someone like us or any coach or any, you know, anyone who teaches this kind of stuff, and they say, you know, I need some help with the thing I'm struggling with, and they know you speak about the law of attraction, and you say, well, you're the creator of your own reality, then they just say, like, fuck you. That's really unhelpful. Like, don't tell me I'm the creator of my own struggle. But it's all about the fact that we keep ourselves there a lot of the time, right?
Yeah.
It's all kind of rooted in the way that we perceive ourselves, how much we value ourselves. And it really is, actually, in the words of Abraham Hicks, it's all about momentum, right? It's how much momentum you give and attention you give to the thoughts that you have. And it's kind of a thing of, you know, once that thought pattern's been going round and round for a while, maybe even years, hey Ryan, then yeah, it's kind of like, it's hard to get out of it because you get so attached to that cycle of emotion, that cycle of thought, that cycle of panic maybe, or worry or fear, whatever it is, because your brain is just so used to going down that route. And if you're not aware of it, then there's no chance you can kind of get out because you're stuck in the emotion. And I'm sure a lot of you know how it feels. Anyway, what do we actually have planned for today? On like 20 tangents. So yeah. Oh no, you've frozen a little bit. Hopefully you're warm.
Oh,
that's all right.
I'm back now. I think I should. Amazing.
Right.
Yeah, I was doing this a little bit yesterday, so catch up.
That's okay. That's all good. I figured I'd just wait a couple of seconds and it would fix itself. But yeah, so we were going to cover what emotions actually are. Again, I feel like this kind of underpins everything that we're like talking about. So this is kind of going to be from like a bit of a neuroscience perspective, rather than like a spiritual perspective as such, although I think the two are massively linked. But that's a whole nother topic of its own. But yeah, emotions. So the reason that we're going to talk about shifting emotions with the body and noticing where emotions are in your body is because every emotion starts in the body. So just as a couple of examples of that, we experience, every emotion that we end up feeling starts from something that we have perceived to be true through our senses or through our memory, and that's a really important part, which I'll get onto in a sec. So, you know, let's say you see someone who is a friend of yours and they look a little bit pissed off. If in the past you've had an experience where a friend has been annoyed at you for something that they say you've done wrong, and it's really upset you and it's really gotten to you, and maybe if that happened loads over time, then you might get into a pattern of thinking, you know, of being actually quite hypervigilant of when people look off or when people look angry around you, and you're kind of like fearing the worst, feeling that they'll be angry at you again, or fearing abandonment from a friend. And so that is both perceiving an experience through like sight, because you've seen, at least through your eyes, that something's a bit off, or felt it kind of thing. But it's also linked to that memory you had from the past, which plays a massive role in, it's kind of like an extra layer added on top of your current experience. So essentially we start the emotional cycle, I suppose, for lack of a better phrase, by experiencing things through our senses. And when we see something or touch something or hear something, whatever it is, that sends a signal to our brain to tell our brain that it's real, to say like, oh, this thing is happening, even if it's biased by your past experiences. Even the things you're thinking in your mind, the things you think you're seeing, because actually sometimes, another tangent, when we see something, like going with this example, when you see someone who seems a bit off with you, seems a bit angry, we are visualizing, usually without even realizing it, literally visualizing in our head them being angry at us. It's almost like we're predicting the future in like a split second. You're literally picturing them ignoring you, or you're visualizing them leaving, like actually pretty massively in your mind, if that makes sense. And even when we think about things like that, even when we think as in we perceive something through our senses in our mind, like you're visualizing something about the future that you're worrying about happening, then that still sends the same signal to your brain. It can't tell what is literally real and what is not. It just knows your emotion, what your senses, sorry, are telling it.
Mm.
So you get that message from your senses to your brain that says it's real, and then your brain can decide, okay, what are we going to do about this? And it reacts. And obviously all of this happens in like a split second. Like if someone threw a punch at you, you'd need to be able to react to that pretty quickly. You know, it doesn't take like the 5 minutes I've just taken to explain that or anything. But essentially that's kind of how emotions form, because what we tend to do is then, as you know already, like go into fight, flight, or freeze a lot of the time. If it's like a negative experience, I should say, or something you perceive to be negative. So yeah, your brain will react in a way. If it's a negative situation, it will try and keep you safe, because your brain's only goal is to keep you alive, essentially. And even if that is alive in the sense of it wants to protect you from the risk of abandonment from friends, because, you know, instinctually, if you are abandoned, then you're like left to your own devices and you could die. Like, you know, if we're going back thousands of years, if you got thrown out of like the village.
Instinct, isn't it? It's survival. That's what you've got to remember. We've moved on a lot, but sometimes our programming hasn't. And I think it's really amazing to just have that. I don't think we hear that in that way, in the sense that you've just described. You've gone back, you know, and layered up the detail, because I think sometimes we don't really understand why we're always preempting fear in that way. But it is a safety mechanism, but it's almost kind of counterproductive sometimes, isn't it? It's not necessarily, it's keeping us safe, but it's not actually allowing us to get to where we need to get to in terms of our growth.
Yeah, tell me about it. I mean, yeah, I for one have experienced this a lot of times. I'm sure a lot of people have. It's like pretty normal.
Yeah.
Given that it's just how our brains work, especially when it, you know, is trying to clash with the way the world actually works today, and it's not the same as how it was thousands of years ago. But yeah, so that's kind of, oh, my Bluetooth thing is speaking at me. So yeah, that's kind of where emotions come from. They come from our senses at first, then it sends a signal to our brain. Even if we're seeing something in our mind's eye, it still sends a signal to that other part of our brain to say it's real, and then our brain can decide how to react, which might be run away, hide, go silent, get angry, hit someone, like hopefully not, you know, like whatever it is. That was an awful example, but you know what I mean.
2 ways usually, isn't there, that we react: hyper and hypo. So depending on your personality or survival style, you'll either, and you'll probably be able to figure out which type you are actually. So you either probably will like react in extroverted ways. So you might kind of look for conflict, or kind of almost look to verbalize kind of how you're feeling, or you might go an introverted way and protect yourself and almost shy away. And that's the 2 responses, and you're usually one or the other. So again, start to understand maybe what type you are, because you'll have a certain reaction, and we're all different. We'll either, like I said, hide away and kind of go inward, or we'll actually kind of go outward and look to kind of verbalize our issue and confront someone. So again, that's really interesting sometimes to just think about which one of those you are, because it's part of just understanding the cycle, really.
Yeah, massively. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that is a massive point. And it is about what you said, like everyone's so different. It's about learning to understand yourself, like, and becoming, well, in my opinion, like self-growth is self-awareness. They're kind of, you know, the same thing essentially, because you can't really grow from wherever you're at right now, at least consciously anyway, unless you're aware of what's going on for you and what you're doing, and how you're acting and the way you're thinking and all that kind of stuff. So definitely like being aware of your typical reactions is such a key thing. And then you can kind of work back from there and think, okay, like why has this happened, or, you know, what triggered this thing to happen, or, you know, that kind of stuff. And then this is kind of where the law of attraction comes in, I think, because then we can either think, you know, like, oh, this happened because this thing really triggered me, and get stuck there and just think about that thing that's triggered you, which is just going to make you more angry or more anxious or more fearful, whatever it is. Or we can understand that the law of attraction is always working, whether we want it to or not. It's always going to be going on for us. Whether you're saying, you know, this really triggered me and I'm feeling angry, or we can say, I'm going to accept this anger, or I'm going to accept this emotion, like whatever it is, tune into my body, see how I'm actually feeling physically, and kind of work from there and to express it. Because actually this would be a great thing for you to explain, because I know you explained it on the phone really well the other day, about like how animals get like express their emotions naturally, and humans are just so different.
Yeah, I found it fascinating actually. I heard the other day, a few weeks back actually, that someone explained it to me in the sense that if an animal gets angry or kind of scared or sad, the first thing that it will do is shake to kind of get rid of, I'm shaking then, to get rid of the energy. And actually, if you know, if you're aware of that now and you kind of go on a dog walk or you see, you know, your dog kind of go up to another dog and they maybe have like a bit of a interaction, they continuously shake, and it's because they're getting the energy out of their body. And I think that really, really shifted my perspective, because I just thought that's such a natural instinct. And the fact that we haven't been able to join the dots enough to figure out actually, yeah, like how do we support that emotion to leave our body when it's no longer wanted. And a lot of my good friends have a physical outlet like dance, whereby actually they've learned that skill, but actually a lot of us haven't. And I think me and you, Ali, are two of those people in the sense that if you don't have a creative outlet as a child to kind of expend that emotion, it can get stuck. And I think, you know, it's really interesting once you realize that, because actually for some people, we'll talk about it later, but it might be singing or, you know, doing a kitchen dance or, you know, doing for a few sprints outside in nature. But there's a need to kind of sometimes get rid of that in a physical way. And I don't think I'd ever really grasped that until recently. And it was a really, really big light bulb moment for me.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, especially if kind of in today's world, it's not like normal to just, if you're feeling anxious, to just suddenly shake it off.
Yeah.
And to, like, imagine me standing up in the middle of the office or something and just be like, I'm feeling anxious, I'm just going to shake in the middle of the office. Like, I definitely get some weird looks, but yes, I'm with you there, Lulu. Like, love shaking things off. Yes, yes, yes. I do it now. Like, even before going live, in all honesty, I was getting a bit anxious before going live because it's my first one. So I was sat here like shaking it off. Like, yeah, maybe even put on some Taylor Swift, you know, whatever floats your boat. But
music is the big one, I think, for a lot of people. Like, music can really just shift your mindset. It can get you into the present. And I'd say for anyone that's looking kind of a way to just kind of like explore this, definitely music is a really good way, because it can just help you just move your body and kind of connect to your body in that moment. And that's been a real, you know, really big savior for me to kind of use music in that way. But yeah, we don't get taught that. We don't get taught any of this stuff around how to express emotion. And I've got actually a friend, Helen, that's joining. I hope that she's that she can hear me, but she's got a her little son and daughter, and she does such a good job with them in terms of actually helping them recognize their emotions. So when he or she is kind of angry or sad, she'll say, Luca, are you feeling angry? And it will encourage him to recognize that emotion. And I just feel, I just think, wow, you know, and she has got a background in kind of teaching, so she kind of does have one step ahead with regards to that. But I think that's very inspiring, and I think it makes me think about how we can introduce this to young people in that way, because actually if we don't ever get to associate with emotion, then how do we recognize it? You know, and I think that was a really powerful moment to see that. Actually, I don't know if you can hear, Helen, but yeah, well done you.
that's really cool. I feel like that's just life goals right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. And it's one of those things where when I first started working through this kind of stuff and figuring out how I was feeling in every moment and becoming kind of aware of my triggers and when I was getting triggered and what was going on for me, it was a case of like, because I'd been pushing it down for so long and ignoring it for so long, when I first listened to it and let it come up, it was so overwhelming that I just tried to push it away again, because I was like, oh my god, what have I just opened? Absolutely not. Like, I'm not going anywhere near that again. And yeah, it's like we kind of learn to not feel, because we think that's going to be more like pain free. But for me personally, it got to a point where I was struggling so much with codependency. I've spoken about this before on Instagram, and I just had this sudden realization that I didn't have a clue who I was anymore, because I'd given so much of myself, not given myself away to other people, but like I'd always put other people's needs before my own. And even like as soon as I'd enter into a conversation with someone, it's like I completely lost myself. It was all focused on them. Yeah. And I kind of just thought, to acknowledge that I'd been pushing those emotions away, and that lack of like self-love I had for myself for literally years, even like probably a decade or more, right? I just kind of when it first came up, I think that's why it felt so heavy, because it was almost as if I was bringing up 10 years worth of emotion, acknowledging it and trying to process it all like in the moment. And that was like, that was so hard.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I was just saying, yeah, of course, you know, like it's, there's no wonder why that would have been so overwhelming in that moment, especially if it was a feeling that you hadn't associated with before. You know, I can imagine that that would have been, but I think a lot of people probably experience that though, but actually just push it straight back down again.
Yeah. That's
whereas you kind of, yeah, whereas you kind of kept on exploring that, didn't you? And you kind of you didn't completely close the door. And I guess that's why we've wanted to kind of open up this conversation, because I do feel like a lot of people get to that point and then just close it again, because actually we don't know how to work it through, and that's something we both really resonate with, isn't it?
Yeah, massively. And I think because I didn't have the tools at the time when I first started learning about this stuff, it was quite like, it was kind of self-exploration. I wasn't actually reading all that much about it. There wasn't much information out there about it. So I felt like I was doing a lot of it on my own. And as much as that's fine, obviously, because it is about self-exploration and, you know, understanding how you're feeling and tuning into yourself, I didn't know how to cope with everything that was coming up at all. And I just remember because it was at the beginning of uni that I started working through this stuff. Great timing when uni's already stressful enough as it is. And I just remember I was in such a low place because I was letting it all come up and getting really stuck there. And I'm pretty sure I spent more time crying than I did not. I used to have the worst meltdowns. I know. Hey Laura, you've just joined. I know I was about to say, some of my close friends will know that every time we used to meet up, it would be a case of like, you know, what was this week's, you know, 5 meltdowns kind of thing. And that was like pretty much like the majority of how I kind of spent my time, not willingly obviously, but I kind of I didn't know how to cope with all the things that were coming up, and all I could do was cry. I know a lot of people find it really hard to cry, but my problem was I was crying like so much that I didn't know how to stop.
It's one or the other, isn't it? It's either, there's quite a few extremes with crying, for example, like you either physically can't, or you either kind of almost can't stop. It's almost, there's a really big spectrum. But I was like you, I was opposite to you actually. I didn't cry for about 3 or 4 years, and I think I was just really kind of just pushing it down. But there's other ways though. If you're not a crier, there's other ways to kind of get it out and kind of almost deal with it and cope with it. And I think that's the key message there, isn't it? It doesn't look the same for everyone. This is so individual, this whole process. And I think we wanted to just lay that on the table, because I think that's the issue. If your healing doesn't look like someone else's, it can almost prevent you from carrying on sometimes.
Yeah, I used to compare myself all the time, because I think as well, like so many people understandably will keep all of their kind of suffering behind closed doors. You don't see how hard other people are finding life. Hey Amanda, it's good to see you here. And yeah, you don't see how, like, you don't see what's going on for other people. And I found myself comparing myself or my well-being, I suppose, to what I saw from other people, and that got me even more stuck, because then I was thinking, why is everyone else so happy all the time, and therefore what's wrong with me? Like, why am I so upset all the time? Why am I so stressed? Why am I so anxious? And again, that was like keeping that momentum going and focusing on the anxious feelings I was having, the fears I was having, all the past stuff that was coming up for me, and I was like in the pit of like emotional hell. And I think that's why I'm so passionate now about helping other people get out of that place, because it feels so much better when you can learn to express emotions, and you can get present with yourself, and you can process it all. And yeah, it's just like, I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. And compared to, like, I don't know, 4 years ago, maybe 5, nearly 5 years ago at uni, I've come such a long way. Sally would be like really proud of me for getting here.
On your own, haven't you? You know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I started on my own, but then eventually, thankfully, found there was like a couple of support groups, and then obviously got some different types of therapy, which I fully recommend. I'm also one of those people who's like so open to talking about therapy. I think that needs to be spoken about more. Like,
yeah.
yeah, definitely preaching that stuff. Like, you know, I've tried kind of CBT and hypnotherapy. I'm now in the middle of hypnotherapy training, which is really cool and really insightful.
And again, with that, it's just so individual, and I think that's something that I advocate, is almost with therapy, it's trying different things, because actually it isn't a one size fits all approach there either. So if you've maybe tried NLP or hypnotherapy and it hasn't worked, don't give up at that point. You know, it's about curiosity. It's about being playful with kind of experiencing that personal journey. And I think, again, people try one thing and then stop. And I think that's where we're both really passionate, because actually that one step, then it becomes very hard to make that step again, because actually the first experience has been a negative one. So, you know, and I think we're heading in the right direction, aren't we, with the fact that actually, I always say this sector in the next 5 years, it's, you know, it's amazing how much of this stuff, even through Instagram, is really kind of becoming more mainstream, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's really good to see it being welcomed a little bit more. I feel like it's still very much online and not so much in person, but like, I could chat for days about this stuff. So if anyone ever wants to have a conversation about it, like, hell yeah. But yeah, no, I remember when the first kind of therapy that I got, I remember it wasn't so much that the therapist wasn't the right fit for me, but I still had so many mental walls up, so to speak. Like, I was still thinking it doesn't feel right to share this with other people. Like, it felt really vulnerable, and I'd never really tapped into that vulnerability before, and that was overwhelming in itself, and that was like adding to the already kind of existing emotions I had that I was struggling with. But then after a while I managed to sink into it and accept that actually I do want help, and this is going to help.
Yeah.
And to actually let that in. So yeah, I think especially given that the background was struggling with codependency, I wasn't used to receiving help or letting other people help me. I was always stuck in the place of giving too much away. So yeah, and this is something we talk about a lot in women's circles, which I love, because beautiful Amanda is here. But yeah, anyway, we were also going to talk about our own experiences. I've kind of touched on mine, but I'd love to hear a bit more about yours.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess for me, I reached out to you. We've known each other a while now, Ali, but I reached out to you recently, didn't I? Because actually a lot of your posts were really resonating with me, especially what you said about thinking, like healing emotion through your thoughts, but not actually through your body. And I've realized that's what I've been doing. So I've been thinking that I've been healing and letting go and processing quite a lot of difficult emotions, but actually not through my body. And I'm one of those people, to put it into perspective, where, and I think a lot of us are like this actually, if someone asks me, where do you feel it in your body? I will make up an answer on the top of my head, because I will be anxious and panicking. Oh, my chest, you know, but I don't know what that means. And I do more so now, so I can, and I'm really, really in almost training at the moment. So I'm very much at the early stages of this, but yeah, I just think that's such more normal that people have that reaction. And actually, for me, it's about sharing my experience with that, because actually I feel like a lot of people do completely resonate. And just to give some background, when we're young, and I think Ali touched on it earlier, we learn to survive. So we have a survival attachment style, and we often disconnect from our body to survive. So for me, I grew up, had a lovely upbringing, but I didn't get much love or affection. And for me, I disconnected from my body, because actually that was the way I coped with the fact that I didn't get emotionally what I needed when I was younger. Now, that happens for a lot of people. But we actually don't learn to then reconnect. Yeah. So that's what I've been realizing. Like, I disconnected and I've still not come back into connection, even today. And I'm very much at the beginning of my journey. So this conversation today is helping me, Ali, in terms of getting your guidance, because I am very much still in the early stages of it. And for me, yoga's been a really, really big part of that, in terms of kind of getting into connection with my body through movement. And like I said, music, so dance and kind of music, and having like crazy kitchen parties. Like through lockdown, I've had loads of those.
Yep. Tell me about it.
I'm finding my way, but I'm still not there. And that's why I guess we're coming at this from like a place of we've not got this together. You know, it's about the fact that we're sharing our vulnerabilities, because this is something I really want to focus on as the next layer of my own kind of healing journey, because I completely agree that emotion has just got stuck in my body. So yeah, that's my perspective. And I just think there's so many other people that would probably feel that way if we kind of actually were honest about that, because I would love to do like just a survey on that, like actually with that question, you know, where do you feel this emotion in your body, like the percentage of people that actually would feel something and the percentage wouldn't. I think it'd be a lot higher than we think, really. So yeah, that's my, you know, my bit really, and it's just a goal. Every day I'm getting closer though.
Thank you so much for sharing so openly as well. It's always good when people can share openly, like it makes a world of difference. And completely resonate with so much what you say as well. And I think it's important to highlight that I like still struggle. I think that emotional, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, we're never going to be free of difficult emotions. They don't just magically disappear one day when you've done enough like self-growth work. Like, it doesn't work like that. You're still going to face challenges, kind of thing. You know, and I still face challenges. I've faced some today, right? And the difficult emotions still come up. It's just that over time, the more you practice, the amount of time that it takes between the thing happening, the event, whatever it is, the thing you're perceiving as being real, versus like, you know, you then noticing what's going on for you, that decreases over time, and you eventually get, you know, better at noticing that more quickly. And I remember that I actually really remember quite well one of the first times I noticed pretty quickly what was going on for me. It completely slapped me out of a difficult place because I was so amazed. I was like, whoa, I'm aware of what's going on. Like, it was,
that's a celebration, isn't it? That's the point where you celebrate. And I think, you know, it's so much of this is just subconscious, and it's our mind is running a program that it's always ran. And I think we have to forgive ourselves when actually this isn't easy. And that's what I've been trying to do, like forgive myself that it's not happening overnight, because actually I'm changing 32 years of programming in my mind. So it's not going to happen overnight, and it shouldn't be easy, or everyone would have this nailed. If it was easy, then we'd all be doing it, you know?
Something I was talking about earlier actually was, you might have heard this phrase before, like taking the path of least resistance when it comes to making decisions. And I used to hear that and think, okay, taking the path of least resistance, that means like going for the easiest route. And in my head, I would have, you know, this visualization of, you know, the path of least resistance is one that's absolute bliss, super easy, but it's not the path of no resistance, it's the path of least resistance. And I was kind of like, oh, so I'm always going to face challenges? Like, damn it. I didn't think it worked like that. I thought,
keeps on
like
I know. I think that's the biggest thing with personal development, is almost like we're never done. And I always keep saying, like, we're always a draft version. And I think accepting that we're always a draft version is actually kind of awesome in itself, once we realize that actually it's never really, and it never really ends. And actually that's the beauty in it, in that it shouldn't be a negative. So when I run a 12-week program, for example, I very much say, you know, at the end of the 12 weeks, I want you to go back a few times a year, once a year, and actually do the course again, because you're going to learn something different. There'll be another layer of development. And I think, you know, once we embrace that, there's almost no rush, because we've then got the rest of our lives. But it's about the right guide and having support, because obviously you get stuck if you've not got someone guiding you towards kind of, you know, that next step. And that's where our work comes in, doesn't it, Ali?
Yeah, I think it's important as well to say, like, there's no like one person that can like heal you or like fix you. You don't need fixing as well. That's like an awful word to use. We never need fixing. We're never broken. Because we're not, you know, but no one's there to change you, fix you, heal you, whatever word you want to use. It's like you do that for yourself. And they're just kind of there to encourage you to do that and give you the space to do that if you're struggling to give yourself that space, or to have that maybe even just like another perspective on life. Or another kind of way of hearing something that you might have heard before, but it lands differently when it's put in different words. And and it's such a process. Hey Abby, good to see you here. Oh, it's so good to see so many like familiar faces popping up.
And you guys, like, if you have any kind of questions, like, we would absolutely answer them. So if there's anything that we've said that you kind of don't understand, or you kind of want to just throw some comments in, this is absolutely what this is about. So feel free to get involved, or we'll just keep chatting away if not.
I wanted to chat quickly as well about an experience I had last year, again to kind of highlight the fact that this is a continual journey. It's not like I've been healed for 3 years and now I'm happy and I'm never sad, you know, like it doesn't work like that. So I told you this story on the phone the other day, so you've already heard it, but for anyone else, so last year despite, you know, all the craziness that was going on. I went on a very small women's retreat. There were like 4 of us there, understandably, given COVID, right? And it was one of the most empowering days I have ever been on in my life, because there was, well, it was a full day, right? My car actually broke down that day, but I was surprisingly unbothered. I think it's personally because of like all the self-growth work I've done.
Yeah, yeah.
Now I'm like,
this is part of my experience.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not bothered when my car breaks down at 2 a.m. in the middle of nowhere, 75 miles from home. Like, there's always a way out, you know. I was surprisingly happy actually that day. Anyway, so that's not the story I wanted to tell. So part of this retreat day involved, she called it a sacred rage ceremony, I think, or something along those lines. And I'd heard about this before, and I was so excited when she said that. I was like, yes, I've wanted to do this for so long. And essentially, it's like you go into a meditation, but it's kind of like the opposite of meditation, because instead of calming yourself down and bringing in the peace, you bring in like anger, rage, resentment, or like anything you have that's stuck in you to do with people, places, things from the past, stuff you're still holding on to that's really getting you down or affecting you, making you angry. And it's, you know, often stuff we don't express because it's not normal to suddenly scream out and express your anger in the middle of, you know, an office or town or like wherever you are. And there aren't many like safe kind of places to do that. And anyway, so this retreat was a great place for facilitating that. And she's called Melissa Sanger, by the way, the person who oh, thanks for that comment. Yeah, the person who runs the retreat is called Melissa Sanger. She's amazing. Definitely recommend you check her out. But yeah, maybe once this is posted, I'll put her tag in the comments below. But yeah, so this sacred rage ritual, you are in meditation, you bring up like all your anger or your resentments. And after like 5 minutes, which is quite a long time actually for feeling that anger without moving, like just bringing it into your body, you can like feel your body like tingling, getting really tense, and just getting really hot as well. At least that's what happened for me. That's how my body reacted to it. And then you basically, because you're lying on your back, you then just turn over and throw like a child's tantrum on the floor. And it was this room of 4 grown women screaming at the top of their lungs into a carpet, and I cannot even begin to describe how absolutely liberating that was. Like kicking, screaming, it was amazing. Because I think as well, like you don't, well, I'm gonna be honest, at first I was a bit hesitant because I was like, this is not normal, like, you know, this is not what I normally do. I was really scared. I was like, what are they gonna think of me? And then I was like, Ali, they're literally all doing the same thing. You're all doing this together, so just go for it. And yeah, and kind of just let it out and see what happens, and kind of hit the mental fuck it button, as I tend to say. So I let it out, and as soon as I started screaming, I was like, okay, I can literally feel it emptying out of my body. And especially like Amanda, if she's still watching, will know that I've done a lot of work on this, especially talking about it in women's circles. I had a massive like block in my throat, and that also because of codependency, I never spoke what like my needs were. I never asked for help. I never really used my voice authentically anyway. So I had a massive block there. So to physically scream and shout out, yeah, it was amazing. It's like it literally just came out, and after that I was exhausted for one, but also I was like, I feel so free and so much lighter and so much happier as well. And I was like, I didn't know I could flip from anger and resentment and rage to happiness in like 5 minutes. I mean, we might not always have the space to be able to scream out freely, but you know, I mean, I'm sure you can. It just depends whether you worry too much about what other people think of you. But yeah, so
I love that, and it's so powerful, isn't it, how something like that was so successful. But it does show that our culture doesn't support that. And I come back to everything we learn as a child. So when you were loud or when you were having a tantrum as a child, what's the first thing your parents said? You know, it's be quiet. So we learn, the belief is that actually we have to suppress. So it's all learned behavior, but it's actually counterproductive. You know, a lot of the time, and there's always, you know, if you look into trauma training, like the first thing you'll do is look back and look into kind of your childhood, because even if, you know, there wasn't any kind of really, you know, really damaging behavior there was probably just beliefs that were formed that maybe just aren't actually supporting you in your life today, but they've not been recorrected. So they're subconsciously, they're still playing out and almost like controlling your life, really. So no, thank you for sharing. I feel like I might do that this weekend. Maybe warn the neighbors.
Yes, Go, honestly, there's like a massive field, or multiple fields actually, like just down the road from my house. Before, I've just gone up to the top of that hill, like in the fields, and just screamed, you know, because I'm like, I feel better doing it there because no one is around at all.
Yeah.
At least I don't think so. Who knows? Maybe someone heard me. Like, I don't know. Maybe someone
like, what's going on in Wallingford? I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, yeah, in this town of all places. But yeah. But anyway, what was I going to say? There's something else about to say and I've completely forgotten what it was, but that's fine. Anyway, I feel like we should go on to how to actually process. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. There we go. So I think a lot of the time when we are thinking about processing our emotions, like you mentioned already, we get stuck in thinking about fixing them. We get stuck in thinking about wanting to get rid of them, and we're trying to process them, or we're trying to express them with our minds from the viewpoint of I want to get rid of this, or from the viewpoint of I want to get out of this, instead of from the viewpoint of I am accepting this. I'm going to sit with this without clinging to it, without thinking I'm feeling really anxious, I'm feeling really angry, I'm feeling really fearful. Instead thinking this is anger, this is fear, this is anxiety. And I think for me personally, like creating that bit of distance between myself and the emotion, instead of saying I am anxious, saying this is anxiety, and almost looking at it as if it's like another person. Like that's something that I do quite a lot. Yeah, exactly, because then it feels so much easier to manage when you've got that little bit of distance. You can kind of take a moment to pause and breathe, and that gives me the space to tune into my body. Because if I'm just focused on the fact that I'm feeling anxious, then I'm so in my head that I don't have the capacity or the space to think about how I'm feeling. And I can't even get to that first step of getting into my body and tuning into my body, figuring out what's going on physically, rather than just figuring out what's going on in my head, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it's kind of creating space. It comes back down to space to process and it not be a reaction, which a lot of our behavior is reactionary, isn't it? We're reacting to an emotion in every moment. It's that pause button, which actually comes back to COVID-19. It is a beautiful pause button, actually. I know that we aren't seeing the positives and it's a very hard time, but actually the blessing is that we are having to pause and actually reflect on kind of things in a different way, and we probably won't get that time again. So it's kind of shifting the perspective there around actually maybe there's an opportunity here to spend time on stuff like this, when actually, you know, we've got just a bit of a change in kind of change in kind of scenario at the moment. So I know it's quite hard to see the positive at the moment, but it's like a reset pause button that can be quite powerful if we use it to our advantage.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people, I mean, if not all people who I've spoken to have said, you know, as hard as last year was, it was an insane opportunity for self-growth and transformation, because we were kind of like forced through it, kind of in a way. We didn't really have a choice.
Now it's like the final push, isn't it? Lockdown 3, okay? You didn't quite do it last time.
Yeah. Exactly, the universe is giving you another chance to like work through the stuff. But yeah, also Laura, I've just read your comment about the cows in the field. Yes, the cows might have heard me screaming. Maybe the man on the tractor, now I'm thinking about it. There was like a tractor going past as well. But yeah, question: how do you convince people you learnt a way to deal with your emotions?
Thank you so much for sharing. Do you want to take that one, Ali?
Yeah, so how do you convince people you've learnt, I'm going to read it again, you've learnt a way to deal with your emotions and that you're okay? I don't try to convince people anymore, in all honesty. I think I used to when I was looking for validation from other people, and I had other people on a pedestal, like specifically my parents. That's a really common one. Wanting to please parents, wanting to please authority figures of any kind, because you feel like I used to attach my self-worth to what other people thought of me. And if there was even one like negative, or even as I perceived it, one negative judgment of me, or I was worried that someone had a negative judgment of me, I would internalize that and think like that means I'm entirely like wrong as a person. I completely need to change. And I've become so fixated on that. Again, that comes back to the law of attraction, actually. Like I've become so stuck on that thought of you know, someone's judging me, something's wrong with me, I'm too this, I'm too that. Oh, there's an amazing poem called The Too Much Woman, I think that's the title of it. It's amazing, basically just about how we push ourselves or make ourselves smaller because we feel like we're too much for people. And that all comes back to like people pleasing and looking for validation.
Absolutely. And you're Eurasia's on my program, Journey Within, so we will tackle that one. We speak about it a lot, and I think it's the hardest bit. It's the hardest bit of your personal development journey is boundaries with other people, because once you shift and once you realize what you value and who you are, the next step is then basically saying no to anything that's not in alignment. And that's the really, really hard part. And we're at that stage, I think. We're actually through module 2. Like, as a group, we have accountability to actually push each other to say no. If there is a friend that actually just is conflicting a value, but yet you keep on spending time with them, that's not necessarily going to then support who you're becoming. And that's the bit there, the boundary work. It is very, very powerful. And I think it sounds like, Ali, you've worked through that. And I think that's where, from my opinion, most people get stuck in their personal development journey. So they know who they are, but they still can't quite kind of like transition that into the real world. There's still kind of this split personality. I know who I am, but I'm still wearing a different mask with this environment or this person. So you're not on your own to get stuck there. Like it's tricky, but that's why we have accountability and support.
Yeah, it's a really hard place to be when you kind of know where you want to be in terms of, who you are authentically, versus you're trying to break out of that mold of who you have been. You're like in that in-between place where you feel so torn between the two. And this one thing of like people pleasing or worrying that people have this idea of you that you need to keep a hold of and keep going with, you kind of, that's like the codependency side to a certain, it might not be like full-blown codependency, but there's like aspects of codependency in that with the people pleasing. And then on the other side, you're like, where you're going, and that's so true for you, whatever this is, whoever you are, whatever your values are, all that kind of stuff. And you're like trying to leave the codependency, but because codependency gives you a feeling of control, it's like learning to let go of that is so hard.
Letting go of control. And I think on what you've just said, actually, Ali, something's just come up for me around, we spoke briefly, didn't we, about emotion, and actually the fact that joy and kind of positive emotions are a little bit easier to feel sometimes. Because for me, I didn't struggle initially with feeling joy, and I'd say back to your recent comment of following the feeling of, actually, we know what kind of excitement and joy feels like. It's that kind of, well, for a lot of people, it's that kind of like butterflies in the stomach, or there's just a burst of energy. A lot of people say to me when we work together, it's like, I get this burst of energy. So actually, if you can't process the harder emotions yet, don't worry, it's all kind of a stepping stone. But the fact that you're following joy and you're kind of following the feeling of joy, you're halfway there. But actually, and I don't know if you agree with this, Ali, but kind of the more positive emotions are easier to engage with initially and process rather than the heavier ones. And I think that's just the nature of our society, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to add to that as well. Like, in going back to how we express emotions and how animals will like shake off stressful feelings or worry or panic, whatever it is, we naturally express the energy of happiness through smiling or laughing, and we do that without even having to think about it. But when it comes to those difficult emotions, we bury them because we don't want to feel the pain.
So that's why there's a big kind of difference there with the fact that some come naturally and some don't.
Yeah, so it's learning about like the fact that we express happiness through smiling and laughing. So how can we express sadness? How can we express anger? And if you're someone who finds it difficult to cry, for example, then that's why I tend to come back to other parts of the body. Like, I don't necessarily have to cry out. If I'm struggling to cry, that's fine. Instead, like, just dance it out, move it out, shake it out, stretch it out, do some yoga. Actually, I want to do, I'm not sure how much time we have left, but real quick, something I learned about in hypnotherapy training recently is something called the CCF, which stands for the Conscious Critical Faculty. And essentially, if you picture like your mind, the top little bit is your conscious mind, and the rest of it is your subconscious mind.
95% is subconscious.
Yes, yeah, it's mad. And like the line between the two is what we call the Conscious Critical Faculty. And it's kind of like the bodyguard to your subconscious, and your belief system lies in your subconscious. So if you like learned when you were younger from hearing it repeatedly, for example, by someone, that you are ugly, you're not good enough, you're too this, too that, not enough, whatever. When you internalize that, because you have nothing, actually I want to give another example. If you learn well, when you're a child, you can learn that a pan is hot to touch. Like a parent might tell you that's hot, don't touch it.
Yeah.
But because it's a physical thing, you can test it. And as a child, you'll touch it, and then you'll learn and think, oh, I shouldn't touch that. It's really hot. I burn myself. But when it's things like beliefs that are being brought into your space, like I'm too much like this, I'm too that, I'm not enough this, I'm too, whatever, I'm too loud, I shouldn't cry. You can't test those because they're not physical. So instead you internalize that belief if you hear it a lot over and over again, especially if it's coming from an authority figure, as someone who you look up to and have on a pedestal kind of thing. And that goes into your belief system. And then it's protected by the CCF, right? And so when in our adult lives, when we hear something that contradicts that, like you are beautiful, you're so worthy, you're more than enough, you're brilliant for me, like if you have a partner, for example, if they're saying like, I love you, you're amazing, your CCF will test that against what it knows to be true. It will test that against that belief you've got, and it will say, this is wrong. That doesn't compute with what I know. And it tries to keep your belief system secure because it's usually what keeps you safe. Like, maybe when you were younger, you would have been in danger in some way, whether it's emotionally or physically, if you'd fought back or argued with a kind of opinion that someone put into your space type thing. So then you feel like that threatens your survival if you go against the belief you've now got. So when someone does tell you nice things, it's like the CCF will literally just reject it.
Just filter it. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for explaining that, because I have never heard of that before. And I know that, there's such a big chunk of us that's subconscious. And I think once we realize that, we think, wow, willpower, there's not much to be said for willpower, because actually it's only going to last a certain amount of time. But that kind of filter, I think that's really, really interesting.
Yeah, especially because willpower is a conscious thing. So you can't do anything about your subconscious with willpower. Like, it's just not going to work. It's two entirely separate parts.
That's, most that in our toolkit, like willpower is actually like for kind of, 60-70% of people, that's what a lot of our society is built on, work hard, play hard. That's all willpower. That's all push. That's all drive. But actually, once we realize that, we think, God, that's only going to get us so far. And that's what leads to burnout. We're going to touch on burnout a bit, aren't we? But burnout is when you get stuck in an emotion. So again, once I realized that, I thought, that makes sense. Being stuck in emotion leads to burnout. And once we think of it like that, again, it can help us want to kind of get through to the end and push through and understand it and work through it. But so many of us are stuck in a state of burnout.
Like, even without noticing it, sometimes you're like stuck in a state of stress, or you're stuck in freeze or fight or flight, kind of at the back of your mind even sometimes, where you're trying to focus on other things, and then you wonder, like, why am I struggling to concentrate today? Well, actually, because I've got something going on at the back of my mind that I've totally been pushing away or ignoring or pretending isn't there. And yeah, it kind of comes back to the whole thing of how we learn to not feel, and how we think that's, it's because feelings are too painful, we don't want to face them, but actually it's more painful to push them away, because they will come up like later, or like you said, it will lead to burnout, and then you kind of don't really have a choice but to face it because it's so prominent in your space.
Absolutely. And we have some tips. Do you want to start kind of, let's cover off the tips in terms of if someone was kind of almost feeling like they resonated with what we are chatting about today, where, and I guess for me too, like I'm one of these people that's really, really early on with this myself. So where would we start from your opinion?
So part of the reason I'm going back a sec real quick. So part of the reason I mentioned the CCF is because there are certain things that kind of turn it off, so to speak, or kind of put the body card to sleep. And they're things that are like distractions and hypnotherapy and other types of things like that, and not meditation, and like if it's really deep meditation, kind of like hypnotherapy, or distractions like watching a film, or listening to music, like you mentioned. That's really good because it literally takes us out of our mind, and there's something external happening to distract us, and that really puts the CCF to sleep so that we can let in the more positive things. Kind of gives us a bit of a break, like a mental break. So for me, getting back into like the body, and once I've managed to find that space, once I've said, this is just something that works for me, once I've said this is anger rather than I am angry, or this is anxiety rather than I am anxious, and I've got that little bit of distance in my mind, then I can think, and this does take a while to like remember. When I first started, it took me like a full 2 days to get to that point, after being triggered by something, but now it's like pretty much instant, which is nice. But yeah, I just stop for a second, focus on my breathing first, because that's a physical thing, getting into the body, not necessarily first of all thinking about, you know, where do I feel this emotion? That might for some people be jumping way too far ahead. It's like as simple as focus on your breathing, figure out, yeah, like focus on what you can focus on, what is happening, what you know is happening, like you're obviously breathing, I hope. So yeah, I always focus on that first, get in touch with what's happening there, and then that naturally just takes me into my body a bit more. And I will literally do like a body scan from head to toe. So I will think like, okay, how is my head literally feeling? Not my mind or my thoughts kind of thing, but literally like my head, my neck, and my shoulders. Are they feeling tense? Are they feeling tight? Can I relax them a little bit more? Like what's going on there? Where am I feeling pain or tension or any of that kind of stuff, and tingling as well, or hot or cold? And I'll do that for my whole body. So like, how does my like even as far down as like, how does my upper left arm feel, and then like my elbow, and then my lower arm, and then my wrist, and then my hand, and then every like finger, and I will go through it like that from head to toe. And that really gets me into my body and thinking, okay, how do I feel? And once I know how I feel, then I can think, and it's about seeing it from a perspective of being like curious about it, rather than thinking
judgment,
this is bad. Judgment,
or
shame,
labeling it, like you said, almost labeling it, you know, looking for the label, because our mind likes to label, and actually it's kind of disconnecting from that, isn't it, really?
Yeah, like labeling is just like another form of control. Essentially, it's just feeling like we have control over our external environment, but we're trying to get internal. So it's more about like just sinking into the feeling and noticing like, okay, this is feeling tight, therefore can I relax it a bit more? This is feeling tense, can I relax it a bit more? This is feeling cold, can I move my fingers a bit more if they're feeling cold? Or like for me as well, if I don't know how I'm feeling, which especially happened a lot at the start, maybe I didn't feel anything, it was like complete numbness. Then something I do is just go straight into like movement of any kind. That could be like
switch you out of your head, at least, because I think a lot of people would resonate saying that actually the head is sometimes the bit that's stopping them getting into their body. So the fact that, you know, you're not getting quite into your body, but at least you're getting yourselves out of your head, aren't you, in that first instance?
Yeah. And it's a case of like, even if you don't know if you're doing the right thing, because at first I was such a perfectionist, really struggled with perfectionism. I was saying, I have to get it right, like straight away. I have to do exactly what I'm supposed to do. But actually now I'm really good at just moving, whether that is taking like a side stretch or like, I don't know, doing like a couple of lunges. It could be anything. It could be exercise. It could be dancing.
Shaking it out.
Yeah, shaking it out, like you said, like all that kind of stuff. Maybe even like, you know, moving your neck, stretching your neck. Even like self-massage as well. I said that on the phone to you the other day, I think, like body massage, properly like massaging the bits that you can feel. Like if you feel something is a bit tense, then doing that to yourself to kind of self-soothe in a way. But yeah, dancing for me, especially if I don't know how I feel, is brilliant. And even I often do that before I've thought through like what's going on for me. Sometimes I know that I'm triggered and I don't need to figure out what's going on. I just need to move. I just need to stretch. I just need to move my body. And then it comes at a much more in a much more peaceful way, rather than in a state of panic. It comes in a bit more of a kind of present way for me, an accepting way as well.
I love that. That's really helpful. And I think it's kind of clear enough that people can kind of give this a go kind of in their own way, to be honest. Because I think
I think I covered off two then. But dancing to music and self-massage, that's like two different things, or stretching.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's sometimes just, at least we've had this conversation to open up the fact that, you know, this is normal that you feel like this, because I think that's the hardest thing. You know, before I reached out to you, Ali, I think a good few weeks before that, I was kind of thinking that I was a bit weird, really, because I was thinking, well, because I've got a lot of friends that are very connected to their feminine and very connected to their body, and I think I was oh, thank you, Arisha, see you soon. And I was thinking that I was on like alone in feeling this, and I think as soon as we spoke, that's what I needed to hear, and that's the intention of this, is that actually it's more normal than not that this is a struggle. So actually that hopefully will just help, because that's what I needed to hear in that first instance. And the same with you, Ali, I think, is that we kind of think everyone else has got this down, but it's not the case at all.
Yeah, I mean, like humans just naturally work in terms of contrast. Like that's how we figure out how to be in the world. We function on contrast, we function on comparison. um, you know, and having the awareness of what that is for you and how that's going for you makes such a huge difference. You know, do you compare yourself, you know, a lot? Like, are you doing it all the time? And are you like really putting yourself down, comparing yourself, or are you lifting yourself up, comparing yourself, which is also not great because that's a whole other topic on its own. But when we judge other people, I think judgment is like the root of kind of imposter syndrome, because if you have an expectation of someone else, then it means you have an expectation of yourself as well. And that's like, you know, post of other opportunities. But that's a whole other conversation. We'll leave that for another day. But yeah, I was going to say the third one as well about using your voice. Did you want to talk about that, like expressing emotion with your voice?
Yeah, I think it kind of comes back to your point earlier, doesn't it, around that kind of your story demonstrates the power of that, I think, absolutely. And I think it's something that I don't think I put two and two together for a little while, even using your voice in the sense that you're reaching out to someone and saying that you're struggling with this would be a way of kind of using your voice. And I think sometimes we think it has to be loud or drastic, but actually it's just voicing, sometimes physically voicing or labeling the anger in terms of actually kind of physically just getting it out of your body. So for me, actually, a lot of what I've realized through processing emotion is I love writing poems. And I never thought, I don't know where this even came from, actually. It was about 3-4 months ago now that I just started writing poems. And actually, even though I'm physically not saying anything, it's still emotion from my body that's kind of on paper. It's coming out my body on, you know, on paper. So I guess my kind of key point is it doesn't look or feel a certain way. A lot of people might sing, for example, like singing and dancing are both creative outlets. And I think if you've grown up with that, you do find self-expression a little easier. So again, when I, you know, if I have children, I always think now, wow, I'm going to think so much about kind of providing them with opportunities to like express themselves creatively, because I didn't really have any outlets like that growing up. And I think I just think about everything so much differently now.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely get that. Like, even I think it was yesterday, I can't remember, I was suddenly feeling, for like no apparent reason, just a little bit kind of low, little like bit of a dip in my mood. And I just remember one of my first reactions was like, oh my God, I'm feeling low. And then I was like, wait, it's not an oh no, it's an okay.
Yeah.
Like, okay, feeling a bit off. And I just thought, I just stood for a second and said, what do I need? What do I need in this moment? Especially given that I'm still in the process of finding my voice a bit more and learning to vocalize stuff like that, even to myself. You know, getting in touch with what do I need in this moment. And I just thought, I just want to sing. I feel like a strong need to just express this through singing. So I found a good song and I just like sang. And as soon as I'd done that, like, and it doesn't have to be good singing either, like just singing, whatever that is for you. Yeah, that made like a massive difference. And afterwards I was like, oh, I'm back to normal now.
Yeah.
Who knows what that was, but it's gone, so I'm not going to focus on it anymore.
It makes you just think though, isn't it? It really is sometimes that easy, but we've just really overcomplicated this for some reason. But because it's so alien, we've almost got to completely learn again. But actually it is that simple of actually, yeah, I sang and I felt better. Like that's how immediate that was for you in terms of actually counteracting that, you know, that feeling. And the same going back to the animal. Again, you know, it's a really quick kind of rebalancing exercise, but actually we've kind of just made something that should be quite simple and like have an instinct around it. We've really made it quite complex and complicated, which we like to do as humans.
We love to like label things, control things, push things away. Like, yeah, gosh.
So interesting. I think we should definitely do another one of these, Ali, again. I feel like maybe even asking like beforehand for some questions from people, because I feel like it'd be awesome to have people like, you know, going away and almost like letting this sink and actually kind of, yeah, coming back to us with a few questions around maybe you've tried a few things that haven't worked or you kind of want a bit more guidance. We can almost then have a bit more kind of a Q&A session, because I think that's the first thing is getting out, having some trial and error, having some fun with it. And then almost we're here then as a guide. So maybe like checking in with everyone and how they're getting on in a few weeks' time would be awesome.
Yes, hell yes to that. I think like if I'd leave anyone with anything from this, it's like, for me, a practice that massively helped. Actually, I got this one from Amanda, who's Goddess Liberation on Instagram. I don't know if she's still watching. But yeah, so essentially, every morning when I wake up, I will ask myself what I need. Like, what do I need today? How am I feeling? Just check in with myself. And again, I'll actually do a body scan. Not every day, I don't do that every day. But most days I'll do a body scan and just see how I'm feeling. And yeah, that makes a massive difference for me. And at first it was really hard because, like I mentioned before, I wasn't really feeling anything. I don't know how I felt. I didn't know what was going on. And in those situations when I don't know what I need, I don't know what's going on for me, just do something. Doesn't matter what it is. Dance, stretch, sing, hum, like, whatever I need to do. Go back to bed for 5 minutes. Wake up in
Exactly. And I think the main thing again is like, it'd be awesome to hear what works for you guys, because I think what works for, like, I love the quote of "we're all just walking each other home." Like, I love that quote so much, and it's absolutely about that. If you discover something that helps you, it might help someone else. So that's what this is about, like bringing it all back and actually sharing the real massive mix of stuff that works for people, because actually then we've got a toolkit that then might help someone else. The more wacky and wonderful, the better. We are unique, and actually what works for you, let's celebrate that. So, it'd be awesome to share some of that feedback next time as well as our own stuff. We're always discovering ways to cope and heal, aren't we?
Yeah, it's also like I don't need the same thing every time. Like, I don't always dance it out. I don't always sing it out. Some days I just need to stretch. Some days I just need to chat to someone. Some days I need to journal. Some days I need to sing. Some days I just need to sit, and then the tears will come in like 2 minutes, or maybe a little while longer depending on where I'm at. But yeah, it's not always the same thing, and the messages don't always come through in the same way as well. Sometimes, some days I ask myself what I think I need and I get nothing, and I'm like, great. Other days I'm like, okay, I know exactly what I need. This is good.
Which is an error, isn't it? And I think that's really open and honest, feedback to end on, really. But it's been amazing to talk to you. I feel like we could have spoken all night.
Yeah, like so much that you were sharing, I was thinking like, oh, I've got stuff to add to that. I've got stuff to add
to
that. Yeah. Yeah, there's so much on this topic. Could go on forever. But yeah, it's all about how emotions start physically in the body. So it's learning about coming back to the body and thinking like, how do I feel physically? How do my arms feel? How do my legs feel? How does my stomach feel? How does my throat feel? How does my head feel? What do I need to do? What do I need to stretch? Like, yeah. Thank you, Laura, for joining. Oh, my cousin's just joined. Hey, David.
And what we'll do is we'll definitely make sure we save it on to Ali's Instagram. And like I said, we can hold us accountable and that we've said it now. So we will do a follow-up in the next few weeks and get some questions to hand before, even if people don't want to necessarily share them in public, we can just talk through some questions and answers, because I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like getting into a bit more detail with how you guys are getting on with this as well.
Yeah. Especially given everyone's situation and experience is so different. Yeah. Anyway, I love how you said we'll try and save this. I'm going to try and save it and not fuck this up.
Yeah. No pressure. It's always when because you've got to do it quite quickly after, and I'm always there like, but yeah, you will, universe, you will see.
Okay, this is going to happen. This live.
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to kind of discussing this more with you in the coming weeks. But no, it's been amazing, and you are incredible.
Oh, thanks. So are you. The next question before we leave is it just the X in the corner that I press?
Yeah.
I don't want to like end it and then it's just going to boot me out and it's gone. And that's
No. Yeah, press the X and then it literally will say straight away, do you want to save it? And then that's when you save it, and then add a little picture, because you're very good with creativity. So add a picture and then it's on your feed.
I'm gonna say I feel like my grandma. It's like when I taught her how to set up her phone. Oh god. Anyway, yes, lovely to chat, and we'll chat to all of you guys soon again.
Yeah. Bye. Nice to see you.
With yourselves and speak to you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.